Greetings gamers, I'm Anto, and today we're going to be revisiting Microsoft OneNote, and I'm going to be talking about how I've been using it as a dungeon master for my weekly game in the last year. Over the last year I've shared my DM Bible with a lot of people, and during that time I've made lots of small and big changes to improve the quality of life when using it. So today I'm going to give you a run through of my DM Bible notebook, how I use it, what's included in it, and some tips for how to run a game using Microsoft OneNote. So let's head over to the computer and get started. Okay, and here we are in OneNote. If you watch my original DM Bible video, you'll notice something quite different straight away, and that's I'm using a different version of OneNote. The most recent version of OneNote is the UWP version, which is the app that's built in to Windows 10. That's the version that's currently getting all of the feature updates, but it's still not quite as content rich as the 2016 version, which is this one. And over time, I've come to enjoy using this one more. I have included a section on versions inside this notebook, telling you where to get the different versions and what I think about them, just as a primer for you to decide which version of the program you want to use. The most important thing, no matter which one you choose, is that you sign in. Signing in lets you save all of your notebooks to Microsoft's OneDrive, which is free up to a certain storage space, and then you can access your notebooks wherever you are. And that is one of the key benefits to OneNote. Being able to go out, you'll get an idea for a session or something in your campaign, you can just get your phone out, make a quick note of it on your notebook, and then when you get home it's there and you can reference it for the planning of the next session or something down the line. So to start with, we've got an introductory section that is just a meta section for anyone using this notebook, telling them how to make a copy of it and how to use it in general. Moving on, we have a section where you want to keep information about your players. I like to do this in groups for active and inactive party members. So if a party member dies, leaves the party, or the player leaves the group, I'll move that player character's information to a different section just so that everyone that's at the table, their section is right at the top. Also included is a couple of different templates. We've got the old style, which I used about a year ago. This is really basic. It's got the top line information for your character, but not much else. And then since I've started playing in person versus online, I wanted some more information at my fingertips. Previously, all the information about any character would be in Fantasy Grounds, which is my virtual tabletop of choice. But when I'm running a game at the table, that isn't necessarily an option. So I wanted to make sure I had the character information in OneNote. To do this, I made an expanded player template. Now this player template is designed to run on a large screen because the screen I run my game on is quite large, so I like to have all of the information available in one glance. If you run your game on a tablet or on a smaller screen, it's just a matter of selecting certain elements and moving them around to suit your needs. But this new character template is much more similar to the official character sheets you get for most RPGs, in that it has got grouped information and everything that you need about your character is there. Next, in the DM's Bible, we've got a section for your world. This is where you keep all the information about the wider world that your campaign takes place in. It's where you would keep your world map, and you can place links on it to different sections in your notebook or links off onto the internet. It's where you would keep your campaign preface, which is the document that you'd send to your players before the game ever started to let them know what kind of game you'll be running. And it's where you'd keep any campaign introduction documents. So anything that you would read or give to your players before the campaign started, you'd want to keep in this section. Then I've separated out the Pantheon into its own section. I found that as time went on and the gods and goddesses of my world became more important, I needed to have this in its own section rather than as part of the world information. And that's one of the biggest changes about the current iteration of my DM's Bible. A lot more of the information has been split out into its own sections rather than nested. Just makes it much easier to find what you're looking for really quickly, and that becomes really important, especially when you're playing at the table with this. So in the Pantheon section, I've included a page on creating deities, which is adapted from one of my videos. I'll leave a link to that particular video in the description. And I've also given an example of the Pantheon in my homebrew game. It's a list of the different gods and goddesses, their alignment, and then their major domains. Next up, we have a section for important NPCs. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know that for the most part, I like to keep information about NPCs in the section for the location you find them in. So I have a different section for each location, and in each of those sections I will have information on all the NPCs you'd find in a particular city. But as time goes on and NPCs become more important to your story, or they start to become a recurring NPC that you have to keep track of a lot of information for, I move them over into this important NPC section just so that I have to do less looking. And for that, you can see I've got an adapted template that just takes some of the base information that you want for an NPC, so that if you've got an important NPC, you can list some of their core stats, some of their combat stats, so that they're there should you need them. Next up, we've got the calendar. I've talked in length before about how I think calendars are really awesome, useful tools. I'll leave a link to that video in the description as well. But you can see here I've given you an example calendar, and I use in-game date, real world date, because that can be really useful as you're trying to remember how long ago in the real world something happened. I keep track of what day it is in game, where the players currently are for that day, and then any notes. Next, I've got a section for races and classes. This I mainly use for either homebrew races and classes or non-standard ones, but if you're playing in person somewhere where you don't have access to the internet, you might want to add all of your players, races and class information here just so you have easy access to it. Next, we've got a section for factions. I like to keep track of some of the notable factions in my world, and I've also included the blank faction template that I made in a recent video. Again, link to that and everything that I talk about will be in the description below, but you can see that I've got the template here, and then also given an example faction that I built during that video so that you can see how I use the template. Then we have the location section. This is where I do the bulk of my planning. For example, if my players were in the city of Sun Hill, I have all the information for the city in a section within the locations tab, and then nested in that I have the map, the list of citizens who are in the city, and then I make a separate page for each of my sessions that take place in that city. So when it comes time to plan, I'll make a new page, give the page a title and the adventure number, and then I plan everything for that session in that page. It keeps all my notes nice and tidy together, and I can access the list of NPCs and the map of the area really easily. Which brings us to the DM screen. Now this is the area of my DM Bible that has had the most overhaul over the last 12 months. When I first started putting together this notebook, as I said, I was running my game mostly online, so a lot of this information wasn't needed at the table. Now that I've started playing in person more, I need a lot more of this information front and center. So I've redesigned the DM screen section so it should be much more useful whether you're playing in person or online. To start with, you can see I've imported the PDF version of the Pathfinder GM screen into my notebook. That's so that everything that I would have on a physical screen is ready and available. It means I don't have to use a screen if I don't want to, or I can use a more decorative screen. I also keep a note of any actions in combat and what those action types are, because that's something that trips me up as a DM quite a lot. So I keep a list letting me know what type of action anything is in combat. Then in this section, I just keep a track of things that I need quite a lot. So the character advancement table that tells me the breakdown of XP and ideal wealth by level, or how time works on different planes, or some of the additional rules that might not be standard. And then I also keep a big list of links. So if I am looking for something, I can come here and look down my list and see if what I need is there. My favorite part of this section, the DM screen section, is these 3 pages, my builders pages. These are amalgamations and adaptations of a whole bunch of resources that are available via the Pathfinder rule set that make building monsters, building dungeons and building cities super easy and really interesting. So the monster builder is a variety of tables that uses the sort of standard stats for monsters at different CRs, and then gives me information on their hit dice as well as their class hit dice and different weapons. That way, if I'm running a session and things go off the rails and I'm forced to improvise and a combat starts, I can look at this and say, right, my party are 14th level, so I can build a CR 14 encounter that I know will be reasonably balanced without having to flick through the books. I can pull stats from these tables, choose weapons from the tables, which gives me the dice I need to roll for damage, and use the lower tables to get the health of the creature or adjust stats as needed. I've found these tables to be really, really helpful, and it takes a lot of the pressure off as a dungeon master. When you're prepping a session, you might not know what specific stat line that you want to use for something, and you might not know how you want to reskin something. So this makes it really easy to build a monster from scratch that's not going to be so unbalanced it breaks the game, but will still have some interesting flair to it. Next we have the Dungeon Builder. This is a list of tables that's included in the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide, which is an excellent book. Even if you don't play Pathfinder, you should pick it up because it's got loads of tips on being a Game Master or Dungeon Master, including these tables, which give you all sorts of rollable random tables to decide where you might find the dungeon, what the theme of the dungeon is, what the entrance is like, and what's included in the dungeon. I found this really useful for building one-shot encounters in particular. Whenever some of my players aren't present and I want to throw something a bit unusual at them, I can roll on this to create something memorable for them. And finally we come to my personal favourite, which is the City Builder. The rules for building settlements in Pathfinder are really interesting and I really enjoy them. So I've put all of them taken from D20 PFSRD and placed them in a way that I find really easy to use. So when I want to build a city, I can look at this, I can see what size settlement I want, how many magic items there will be, how much gold they'll have to spend on things that the players might want to sell them, and then I can use the settlement rules for governments, qualities, disadvantages to add flavour to my city. So I can scroll down and I might decide that a particular city is impoverished, and I'd look at that and we'd see that disease and poverty run rampant, and we'd see that the purchase limit is halved, so far less is going to be available there. And these little pieces of fluff really help give you a more interesting settlement. Next up we have my homebrew mechanic section. Anytime that I want to create a mechanic from scratch or take some mechanics from an official source and tweak them slightly, I'll put them here. So I've got rules for healing, rules for drinking and taking illegal substances, I've got rules for jousting, rules for gambling, rules for resurrection in my setting, rules for petrification in my setting, all of these types of things. Anything where I deviate from the core rules, I will list here. And finally, where would any good DM be without their random tables? So in my DM screen, I've got a big list of D100 lists that I've gathered from different sources around the internet, all made myself, so that I have lots of options when it comes to things going off the rails or when I need help planning sessions or encounters. I've got lists for everything from store names to plot twists to MacGuffins to non-magical and material rewards. They're all really great resources when you need just a little bit of help. And finally, in my DM Bible, I have a section on initiative. Now, when I first built this, I preferred to have a separate page for every specific combatant in an encounter, but after running some really big combats, having 20 or 30 pages in rare cases can get really unwieldy. So I prefer now to use a table. I have the initiative in descending order going down one side, and then I have information on the character, their current HP, their total HP, their different armor values, their conditions, and any notes. And this lets me run the combat really quickly. It lets me move players around the initiative order with relative ease, and it allows me to keep track of status effects and things like that really easily. And there we have it. I hope that's given you some inspiration on how to keep your own notes as a DM. If you want to get a copy of my DM's Bible, I'll leave a link down in the description below for you. And if you've been using this notebook, I'd love to hear what you've included or what you'd like to see included to improve it so that we can make a better notebook for the entire Dungeon Master community. But until next time, happy gaming. If you're new here and like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I release new RPG related content every single week. And if you enjoy what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon. You get access to behind the scenes video, early access to the regular videos, exclusive content, and a whole bunch more. And if you want to keep watching, I've got a couple of videos over there that you might enjoy. And until next time, happy gaming.